Hello, my friend. Welcome back to the Mindset Check podcast. I'm your host, Misha McKittrick. This is a podcast where we believe that as you take time for a mindset check, you have more power than you think you do. And where we also believe that keeping our priorities straight around friends and money is a super important thing to dive into and to allow yourself to feel motivated about, okay? So we'll get into all of it, what that's about today. I'm super excited because I love every single time that I can share with you something that my dad taught me because, you know, I miss him. And when I get to talk about him, I really, really love it. So we're going to dive into some of the things that he taught on this episode today. And aside from that, I really want to just take a moment to encourage you to do whatever it takes in your life to plug in and get the full charge for your battery, okay? So, of course, what we talk about today will give you a charge to your battery. And a lot of the things that we talk about on the podcast gives you charge to your battery. But I think a lot of times in the summer, we fall off the rails of doing, the things that help us stay grounded. And I just wanted to inspire you to make sure that you're doing the dailies and the things that help you keep, that charge, that your battery has been plugged in and it's spent the time to sit there and get charged, even if it's one of the solar power battery packs that you use when you're on the go, okay? Like hypothetically thinking about the ways that you can charge as you are on the go and out and about and doing lots of fun things this summer. And without further ado, let's jump into this episode. Today we're chatting about friends and money, and pretend that you didn't already see the title of the podcast and try to see what is already in your heart around this topic. And it's not really about like placing one over the other, right? Like that we're comparing the two, but I am going to share with you a couple of perspectives right here in the beginning that are perspectives from people, just random people online. And I want you to pay attention to the vibrational energy that comes, that you actually feel as we talk about and present a couple of different perspectives. And I want you to know that I'm presenting these perspectives to really drive home a point. And then I'm going to teach you a little bit about my dad's perspective and what he would teach me as I was growing up. All right, so here's the first comment that's a bit long from someone that posted this to Quora online, all right? So he says, money solves problems, friends don't. Friends can only give you emotional support during difficult and dark times and nothing more. Money makes you independent. Friends demand to conform and sacrifice a part of yourself in order to fit, especially if they have addictions and destructive habits such as alcohol, tobacco, or drugs. Money helps you achieve your dreams. Friends often try to make you give up your dreams. By this, your life loses goals and meaning. If you have money, you can grow. If you outgrow your friends, they will despise you. Money liberates. Friendship through peer pressure enslaves. Having money, you can give real and actual help to others. Friendships, as I said above, do not give anything more than false psychological comfort. Friendship ends sooner or later, especially when your friends get married. Enough about the myths about how you can't survive without friends and you can always count on them. When you have money, you can buy everything friends can do for you. You need someone to help fix your car, you can hire an auto mechanic. You need advice, buy it from an expert, not a friend. Imagine what it would be to ask your friends for health advice instead of a medical doctor. You have problems to share, or you need somebody to help you cope with any problem, hire a coach, psychologist, or psychiatrist. You need empathy? Many of those specialists can offer it to you. You have plans and dreams you strive to achieve? Friends can't help. They may convince you that your dreams are impossible. Present your dream as a project in front of specialists who can help you really achieve it. Finally, you need affection, love, loyalty. The creatures who will offer them to you are four-legged. You have to choose cat or dog, or as I did, both. They are loving and loyal till the end. Human loyalty and love just can't be compared to those of the animals at all and is worth nothing. But having a pet costs a lot. Healthy food, regular visiting the vet, and so on, they all cost a lot. So what could friendship offer that money can't? He then goes in to talk about how during COVID-19, people who had money actually had resources that helped them, like gyms in their home and so forth. And people who chose to have friends over money got to be holed up in these apartment buildings, basically living on top of each other, right? He said they were stuck together in apartments and had an awful time. Okay, so that's kind of a mouthful. He ends by saying, good education is much more valuable than friendship, but good education costs money. So friends suck, money rocks. Now, this is someone's real opinion. This is their real reality about life. Pay attention to how you felt as I was reading those things, because this is a really important thing to dive into. Okay, you'll see by the end of the episode. All right, here's another person's 2 cents. All right, every answer here makes sense. If I say friends are more important than money, then it would be quite naive and foolish. Choosing money over friends sounds selfish and materialistic, but it makes sense. In today's world, when human values and integrity have lost all meaning, having money is not a bad thing. In a country like India, where I come from, anything can be bought and sold. I guess being poor in India or anywhere in the world isn't a very good position to be in. At the end of the day, money sees us through a lot of difficulties. Money is required for education, health, food, and every other basic necessity and want. People need money, even to hang out with their friends. Choosing money over friends may sound mean and low, but it makes much more sense. All right, here's another person's perspective. Money and friendship? No correlation. We do friendship with people because of their nature, behavior, and common things we share. You don't have to be rich to make friends. If you're doing friendship for money, then it is not friendship, it is business. At least, I don't look for money while doing friendship. I have a friend, we're best friends, we can chat for hours and hours without getting bored. I was friends with him without knowing about his family background. One day I came to know that his father was a businessman and they're very rich, but this didn't change my opinion about him. We're still best friends. He's rich, but he does friendship with anyone. People who do friendship for money are gold diggers. Stay away from them. And then he puts a quote saying, poor is the one who has no friends. Okay. So this is just a really juicy and good conversation. And my dad was really, really passionate about this. He was passionate about the priority of friendship being more important than money. Or really the way that he put it, the principle was, a person who dies with many true friends is a person who dies truly rich. Or it's more important to have friends than it is to have money. So this kind of gets really visceral, right? This starts to get whoa, because if we are talking about necessity, right? And just the need to survive, then you might flip the switch and say that money's more important, but then watch what it might motivate you to do, or things that you would, I guess, stoop to be able to survive, right? This is, and sometimes to me, it's I'm not really that afraid of dying or where I go when I die. So I'm not really, I don't know. I guess if my family's life was on the line, but I always tell my kids, I'm if anything ever came down to it, we know where we're going. Let's not be that afraid of it. Let's not lose our integrity over the need to survive, right? Maybe dying with honor is better. Anyway, that's kind of going down a whole nother rabbit hole. But I think ultimately what my dad was really trying to teach is being the kind of person who's really, really aware that people are more important than money. That is first and foremost, a very foundational principle. And it just can kind of get a little bit tricky with the comment about money, because then, your brain can do tricky things to you and say, then money's dirty, or money's not good, or money is bad because that means I'm choosing money instead of friends, which is not true, right? It's just keeping your priorities in check and making sure that you are not showing up as a fake person or as an opportunist, being nice to someone so that they will buy you something. That's absolutely crazy, right? But our brain does that, and that's a normal human function, especially when we don't have. It can be really tricky to try to navigate through those waters. And I think that some people have really harsh, a harsh way of looking at this topic because maybe they have been burned in the past, or maybe they've never really been shown true friendship and love. And by friendship, I also want to be clear that I'm talking about anyone that you really choose to be friends with, right? So some of our best friendships are in our families, which is a beautiful, fantastic thing. But friends across the board, whoever you feel like you have that friendship with or can develop that friendship with, that is the relationships that we're talking about in this episode, right? Like our community of friendship, whether that is just people that you have chose that you're not related to or people that you are. So I know also that my dad, in teaching this lesson, is also really trying to drive home the point of our time and where we spend our time, right? Because it can become very consuming to do what we're doing for work or how we make money, that enough times we don't pull away to make friendship and our community a priority, right? And so that's a huge part of this. And so essentially saying like that cultivating those relationships really are more important. People are more important than any amount of money. And be careful if that ever comes in the crosshairs with each other. But really, money is really good. And money can actually help friendships. And here's how. Because, right, if we are a slave to the way that we make money and we're pouring all of our time into that, then we aren't freed up for the time to be able to spend with friends. Or sometimes money can also assist in us making great memories with our friends and to be able to participate in seriously so many things. And I'm not saying that you have to have money to have friends. Be careful there, right? There's all kinds of things that we can do to just spend time together that doesn't cost. But money is a good and beautiful thing, and it can assist in so many great ways. So I just want to make sure that I'm really being clear, because I know our brain, isn't it wild how many beliefs can actually get placed into our subconscious brain without us even really seeing clearly what's being placed there. So a lot of the principle with what my dad was teaching is he would help us see and understand that the most important things are the things that we take with us when we die, right? That's not money. But friendships can go with us when we die, right? That's our families go with us, our friendships can go with us. That's also individual belief, but that's something that I do believe. So there's something really cool about sequoia trees and the way that they're interconnected. So sequoia and redwood trees, they all have shallow root systems, and they spread out wide and they intertwine with the roots of other like trees. And this actually provides mutual support and stability. I think on another podcast, I shared this experience that I had when I went to my friend's lake house in Montana, and she was showing me how there was these people who bought a shoreline property, and they wanted to clear out some of the trees so that they could have more area for beach or lawn or whatever it is that they wanted. So they decided to get rid of some of the trees, and it was so devastating to them and to all of their neighbors. Once they got rid of those trees and the strong winds came, the trees that were on the inner part of where those trees that the outer part had supported were too weak to be able to withstand the winds. And so they lost a ton of trees. They lost a lot of trees instead of just picking out a few trees, which goes to show how like the support system of those trees being there and those strong connections, that it creates stability, it creates networks in our lives. I remember being in a lesson one time when we were, sitting side by side in chairs, and the presenter had us all stand up. And they first just had us just stand like normal and said, "How are you doing standing?" And it was kind of like a joke. And you're like, "We're doing great standing." And then they had you lift up one leg. And a lot of us were women in heels, and it's kind of a little bit tipsy, right, on one foot. And they had us interlace our arms behind each other's backs, and then lift up one foot. And we were solid. We were stable. And it was to drive home the point that when we are surrounded by others, even when we aren't standing on 2 feet, that we are more stable with the support of those around us. There's also a lot of science behind the way that we can be emotionally supported as we go through life. There's something called emotional contagion, and it's actually this really fascinating phenomenon where we involuntarily absorb and reflect the emotions of those around us. There's this interconnectedness into lots of scientific disciplines like mirror neurons, how we mimic each other's emotions, and social neuroscience, where we are wired to respond to social cues like emotions and the ability to be able to foster connection and community. Like we're already given that as something inside of us, right? That's like a huge clue. That's like a huge puzzle piece to even figuring out the way that we were made to be able to support each other. I love the concept of emotional resonance. And this is when we resonate with others' emotions, our brains actually synchronize and we create a shared emotional experience. And so what this looks like is somebody can be experiencing stress or pain, or they can be going through a big struggle in their life. And when a loved one walks in and sits down by them and puts their hand in their hand, it makes whatever trial or struggle that they're going through so much easier because of the way that our emotions and brain activity syncs up. And that's like the support of standing on one leg with arms connected, supporting each other, right? I remember there was a time when I had my 4th C-section. My mom was at my house and she was helping take care of me and take care of baby and everything and all of my family. And if you've ever had a new baby or observed a woman with a new baby and been by her side through it, holy moly, like it is a feat to have the baby fed and showered and in clean clothes, yourself in clean clothes, and to feel like you're somewhat like put together. So I finally achieved this. And I don't even remember what day it was. Maybe, I'm going to guess, maybe like day 4 or something of recovery, right? 4 or 5, something like that. I was still having like some trouble moving around, or I should say just moving a little bit slower than my normal self. And I remember it was in the time when, we had those matching tracksuits. And I was in the bathroom, and I had just used the bathroom, and I stood up, and I was all clean. Like I was just getting ready to go sit down on the couch because I was kind of exhausted from doing all the things that it took me to get to that point where baby was fed and we were both clean. I stood up after using the bathroom, and I just felt all this warmth all over my belly and my legs, and my C-section had opened and there was just blood everywhere. And I was like, "Mom!" Just yelling, "Mom, come here, come here." And I started crying immediately, and I was such a mess because I had heard of this happening before, but yet it had never happened to me. And it, quite frankly, I was so scared. Like I was scared of what that looked like. Like, is it all the way open? Like, what is this, So I was like, Mom. And she came in the bathroom and she observed through my clothing that I had all of this blood everywhere. And I was crying, and I remember her soft hands and her just looking me in the eye and saying, "Sweetheart, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. Come here." And she got some towels and she wrapped me up, and her just caring for me, getting me to a place where I could sit down, we could call the doctor, where I could get in the car and get to the doctor's office and all of this business. I'm just going to try to describe to you the difference in my emotions. I went from being overly panicked and actually, quite frankly, so scared to when my mom walked in and she said, "Honey, it's going to be fine," I immediately felt held and cared for immediately. And I trusted her, and I knew that she would do everything that she could for me. And I just felt okay. Like there was a different level of okayness. And I'm sure that there is something that may have run through your mind as well. The time that you just wanted your mom, or you just, felt so much comfort from a loved one being there for you in your time of need. And that, to me, if we were comparing friends and money, okay, but we're not. We're not. We're not really. I'm just really trying to drive home a point. I'm trying to make sure that we have our priorities straight and that we put time into our community and to supporting and loving. I've told this story before about when we first moved into this house that we live in, and within like a 24-hour period, there were like 3 different things that fell off of my walls, all at separate times, and it was all my fault. I think it was like whatever day you start hanging stuff up, by like a week in or something like that. And within a 24-hour period during that time, I had something fall and the glass broke. I had another beautiful art piece that fell and pieces broke off of it. The first one was, I didn't have one of those 3M hooks. It didn't say the pounds. The pounds weren't high enough on it. So P.S., just a little side note, you never know the things that you're going to learn on this podcast. And then the other one was that I had too short of a nail on the art piece to help hang it. And then the other one was actually not necessarily my fault. It was because during the move, the wires on the back of this really heavy mirror had gotten loose. So it wasn't the hardware that I put into the wall. But we were super blessed when that one fell too, because that one was a huge mirror. And it just so happened that the desk that it was sitting above, which had all this computer equipment on it, was not pushed all the way up against the wall yet. And so it just slid down the walls and scratched the wall, but it didn't crash all over the, computer equipment and stuff that would have been like really bad. Oh, so I'm telling you that story to help you really just think about the ways that we support each other. And when we don't have enough support, we fall. And when we fall, sometimes we break. And luckily, I was able to repair all of the situations. Everything that broke, I was able to repair. And it was just, an inconvenience versus like being a huge loss, like maybe some loss of time, right? But if you just think about your life and about the people that AKA have your back when you're standing there on one foot with a stiletto on your foot, who is it that's there? And who are you there for? Because I'm going to tell you that it's not just in the moments when the blood happens that you're there. Like my mom was already there, and she already had the type of relationship with me that her voice and her commitment to me was comforting me. And I love the quote from another person who chimed in on that same thread when they said, "Money is a formulated answer. It has no emotional ability, and your relationship with money is not out of your highest need of life. It is out of the instinct and necessity to survive. In an age of devaluation of human life, it's important to remind us that the highest need for humanity is love. To love and be loved wholesomely." I have this image of my Aunt Cindy, who we were able to see just a couple of weeks ago. And my Aunt Cindy and Uncle Don, they travel from I want to say 13 hours. And they usually come every single summer to be able to see both sides of their family, right? And what's really cool is the awareness on her part of the sacrifice it takes to have everybody get together at the same time. Most of the time that means you're missing out on something else, right? Because our lives are so busy. And it's such a sad reality, but that just is reality. So I have this image of her when we were saying goodbye. And she was a little bit emotional in thanking us in that manner and just saying, you have no idea what you mean to us. You have no idea. And you want to know what we did? We got together and we ate and we played games and we laughed our guts out. That is incredibly valuable. So valuable. So I want to share with you a story from the book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. And this is in the introduction of his book. And he calls it the Roseto Mystery. There's a village called Roseto Valfatoro. Okay, that's a total, I'm guessing on the accent on that one. It was a village by Rome. And in this village, the people that lived there worked in marble quarries. That was the main supplier for income for that community. And they would walk 4 and 5 miles down the mountain every morning and make the long journey back up the hill at night. And life was actually really, really hard. So the townsfolk of this city were barely literate, they were desperately poor, and they didn't have a lot of hope for economic betterment until word reached Roseto that there was this land of opportunity across the ocean. So they came to America. Little by little, first a little group and then a little bit more, and they sent for more and they sent for more. And eventually they created this community in Pennsylvania, and they all congregated and populated there in this new town, right? And they named the new town after their village in Italy, so they called it Roseto. And they created this incredible community here in the United States. They organized festivals, they set up spiritual societies, they had backyards that they planted with onions and beans and potatoes and melons, and they were raising pigs, and they were growing grapes and making homemade wine and creating schools and all kinds of things, right, in their community. And in the 1950s, so to give you a little bit of perspective, when they started coming to America, it was 1882, okay? So fast forward in time, 1950s, there was this physician that started to notice that there was no one under the age of 65 with heart disease, which at the time in our country was completely unheard of. This was before the advent of cholesterol-lowering drugs and aggressive measures to prevent heart disease and so forth, right? Heart attacks were actually an epidemic in the United States. So they started doing all of this research on the town because, they were so curious. Like, well, what is making these people actually so healthy? And they set up some stations, and they were there for the whole summer. They took blood and did EKGs. They studied their diet. They poured over the death certificates of everyone previous, that lived in that community and how they died. And they didn't find anyone under the age of 55 that had ever died of a heart attack or showed any signs of heart disease. There was no suicide, no alcoholism, no drug addiction, and very little crime. The people were dying of old age. That was it. So they decided they were going to look a little bit deeper, and they dove into their dietary practices. And they were like, that's for sure not it, because they're using lard instead of healthier olive oil, which they had used back in Italy. And they were putting, instead of those thin crust pizzas, they were making thick crust with sausage and pepperoni and salami and ham and all of this crazy stuff on their pizza. They smoked heavily, and they, a lot of them were obese. They were saying, okay, well, was it their genetics? And they studied other people who had left the same village in Italy to see if it was just their genetics. They found that wasn't the case. They figured out that it wasn't the location. There was nothing about the location that changed their health. And they discovered that it was actually Roseto itself. They looked at how they visited one another, stopping to chat in Italian on the street or cooking for one another in their backyards. They learned about their extended family clans and how many homes had 3 generations living under one roof and how much respect grandparents commanded. They attended church and found that there was a lot of unity and calming through that event that they attended weekly. They discovered that they had this underlying way in their community, which discouraged the wealthy from flaunting their success and helped the unsuccessful obscure their failures. They had created a powerful, protective social structure capable of insulating them from the pressures of the modern world. The Rosettans were healthy because where they were from, because of the world they had created for themselves in their tiny little towns and hills. To be able to observe them through all of their family meals, all the bakeries, people walking up and down the street together, sitting on their porches together, talking to each other, they observed that it was magical, even the way that they worked together. So this is when science began to understand that we had to look at more terms than just obvious choices that we make for our individual self, and health in terms of community and what we experience on a community level. And to me, when I read that, I was like, my heart was leaping, and I'm like, yes, yes. It felt to me like it really brings home the importance of community and the choices that we're making on a level of being connected to other people. Because I do think that we live in a time where that can easily be lost, where the sacrifice to love someone, even through their imperfections, is a very good thing. And it helps us to also give ourselves grace, because we have imperfections as well, right? For me, connecting through friendships brings richness to life. It asks us to improve and to be better. It's the space where we have to see ourselves and clean up the parts of us that are offensive to others, right? Where we mess up and we get to learn forgiveness, both in forgiving the other person and in seeking to be forgiven, and also to forgive ourselves for the ways that we are imperfect. Friendship is where we learn to truly be giving, where we learn how to be abundant in more ways than with money. But what's interesting is that what we become, we attract. So in our friendships and in our connecting with other people, we discover that the more that we are giving and the more that we are abundant, the more we attract that exact same thing into our life, which then does correlate with money, which is amazing, right? So it's fun to see all of the ways that it crosses over and to focus on the ways where it crosses over for good. It's where we learn to be loyal, and that who we become and the relationships we create here go with us when we die, and money doesn't, right? And yes, friendships are meant for a time and a season. Friendships really are a reflection of you. And so as we grow, sometimes our friendships change. Sometimes they evolve, and that's okay. We appreciate all the friendships that we have had, and as we gravitate towards new friends, we still honor our old friends, right? And it's so great to also see that we can have lifelong friends, right? And learning to truly sit back in awe of all of the incredible people that we have had the privilege of crossing paths with in our life. There's a quote by Paulo Coelho that says, "When we love, we always strive to become better than we are. When we strive to become better than we are, everything around us becomes better too." So I'm a believer that through friendship, that's exactly it. We become better, and then we have more to offer and to give. It's a beautiful circle of life. And I love this quote by Esther Perel that says, "There's no greater source of joy and meaning in our lives than our relationships with others." So much meaning, so much joy, so much fulfillment. It actually affects and changes us on a molecular level, right? On this level of the way of our health, on the level of the way that our body functions, and the way that we're able to be comforted, and the ways that we're able to live with honor, and to be able to see, the ego side of us, and when greed steps in and we can kind of pull back and take a priority check over what is more important. So that is the reason why I think that the topic, friends and money, go together, because it begs us to look at the ways that it gets in the way. And for that reason, that's why I wanted to look at it together today, right? And ultimately to pass on a teaching that I think came from a very wise source, right? This way that my dad had of looking at life that I just appreciate so much and that I love. And how important I think that we need the reminder to continue to form communities where we have dinners in our backyards with our friends, or where we reach out and we talk with each other about normal things that are happening with life, so that when hard things come, that we can be there to support the ones that we really love. And with that, I hope that you can see that the value of your friendships and your community brings you more power than you would otherwise have in life. All right, my friend, I hope you love that episode. And more importantly, I hope that it has inspired you to reach out to your community, to really make sure that you are extending and inviting, right? Because I think a lot of times in life, we feel like there are a lot of things that are happening around us, but we're not a part of them. And we fail to be the person that creates the thing, right? There's a few people who are really great at it, and sometimes we just leave it to them. So here's your challenge: to pick up your phone and text some friends and get together. Get together, and don't make it a big deal, and don't make it hard. Just make it easy and pour love into your people. I want to leave you with a quote by Swami Vivekananda that says, "Relationships are more important than life, but it is important for those relationships to have life in them." With that, I hope that you have a beautiful and blessed day. Until next time, my friend.